Alrighty. Hello again, YouTube. It's us again. So,
Good evening.
as always, we decided to do another little, not a podcast discussion about fighting game stuff because we're just so good at this and love yapping like motherfuckers. So today we decided we wanted to get around to talking about the idea of intent in fighting games. This is something we talk about a lot when we're doing some of our coaching and just general discussion in our community about part of formulating a game plan, I suppose. It's one piece of the puzzle in playing a fighting game well is having very clear intent in what you're trying to do. And this is one of those subjects that's kind of hard to grapple with at first. It requires a bit of discussion for what we mean by intent and how to best describe it, and give some examples of what intent and a lack of intent looks and seems like. What's your kind of general take on intent, Genki? Let's start with you for once here.
So I think the just a very like the starting line of this entire discussion. I think it's interesting to consider the fact that like when at least I personally, when I say intent or meaning, it's more like a bunch of different discussion hidden in a trench coat, basically. I'm using intent as like this encompassing like multifaceted like thing. So intent to me, more or less, you're trying to like whenever you pick an option, whatever like situation you find yourself in a fighting game, you are already aware of where you're gonna be or what your options are in general. So like you're mid range and you decide to poke the opponent with a very specific button because you know that on block it's like safe, or you can actually convert out of it or counter it, or when used it's impossible to counter it consistently because it's disjointed. Many reasons for you to use that one button, basically, but the point is you know exactly what the risk and the reward is from utilizing the attack. That's my idea of intent. You have a game plan already, like planned. Like you have a plan, actually, not a game plan. You just have plan out in advance for your next like options. You press a button, and then an entire micro like universe opens up of like I'm going to do this into that, into that, into that. That's to me is the idea of intent, of meaning.
Yeah, generally what I would consider. My description of it always sounds very similar to that, where when I refer to intent, I'm generally referring to the idea of making a decision to create a situation. You are using something because you know what it does. The example I'll always use is when I'm playing Racing and Soku. I am pushing 5B in neutral because I understand that it's going to put a projectile on screen that's going to force the opponent to interact in some capacity. Either they're going to use a projectile of their own, or they're going to move. You are doing something because you understand the cause and the effect. You know that by doing that button, you are going to have some kind of effect happen that you can account for. And that generally ties into the idea that we discuss with the layer zero of playing a fighting game, where intent is a core component of your start point, of where your baseline lies.
Mm.
Generally, so this is something I can point to for when we have a lot of conversations with some of the people we play with, where they feel like they don't really understand or have a lack of direction when they're playing through like neutral or offense or whatever. It's largely because there is a lack of intent in their decision making. They're pushing a button or doing something, taking an action because they clearly have to make an action. They have to do something. You have to make something happen to play the video game. And that is a really difficult thing to try and, I guess, bash out of someone's head. It's the classic example I'll always love bringing up is in Street Fighter. Generally, when you watch like high-level Street Fighter players, they tend to do the shimmy a lot. You might see it when you're
Mm.
watching like tournament footage or just high-level replays for like ranked net play and stuff, where you'll watch, round start, two Street Fighter players will just kind of move back and forth for some reason. Most people don't really understand that the intent of the shimmy is an extension of playing footsies in that game, where generally speaking, round start range in Street Fighter is like prime footsie's range for most characters, where you're in that range of crouching medium kick, where you're trying to poke into somebody with something relatively low risk, medium to high reward. Crouching medium kick, depending on the character, tends to be that context. Let's assume we're talking about like the Shoto archetype for this to make it easy. You're pushing crouching medium kick, but if you whiff crouching medium kick, that's never good. So walking back and forth just right out of crouching medium kick range is generally what these higher level players are doing, because hey, I can make the opponent whiff crouching medium kick, I can then punish with a whole smorgasbord of options depending on who we're playing exactly into offense. And you'll watch lower level players, people who maybe only have like the context of watching the replays rather than being able to talk about it or understand deeply why the decisions are made. They'll round start trying to shimmy back and forth, and then immediately get hit by like a standing medium punch because their opponent isn't playing that level of footsies yet. They're not really engaging like that. And they go, well, shit, what am I supposed to do? This doesn't work. Why are they doing this? Because that lack of intent tends to be there. The lack of knowledge and intent. You're shimmying for the sake of shimmying rather than shimmying because you're trying to explicitly bait something. This often comes in things like pressure as well in games, where you'll watch a lot of higher level players. They'll be on like layer 4 when it comes to decision making, where they're like doing very clearly unsafe stuff, but they're doing that because the respect has been built between the two players. They know, like, hey, I don't need to, like, I want to push the funny button here, because if I push the safe button here, nothing's going to happen because my opponent is expecting the safe option. But I can't push the slightly less safe option because that's still something my opponent can deal with. So we go for the, here's me doing, like, Bandit Bringer super early in a string, not because it's a good option, but because this is something, the intent is to throw my opponent off so I can do something different.
Hmm.
You, again, see it a lot with high level replays, especially with high level replays of players who consistently play with each other and understand each other's game plans intimately. It's part of that discussion that is very difficult to get across to someone who hasn't delved deep enough into the genre to understand where that comes in. And this is where we get into the really muddy discussion, where now it's like, are we talking about intent? Are we talking about layer 0? Are we talking about formulated game plans? It's the trench coat of discussion topics that Genki mentioned, because these all have a very intrinsic link to each other.
I think the one example you did just now about like pressure, for example, it's I find it really interesting, but because when it comes to intent, to a meaning in your actions, I think pressure is a funny example because here's the thing, right? If you play any fighting game, people tend to press a bunch of buttons, and then they call it a block string, right?
Right.
I've done a block string. And I've always found it kind of interesting because often a block string is just a bunch of buttons. Then you press the one you actually care about, and then you do a thing. And that all, say that's a thing that always bothered me because like I feel like people are not really paying attention to what pressure actually is supposed to be. What I mean by
Mm.
that is that like I'm sure you've seen this before, right? Let's say
I have a
let's
point. I
use
have
a
a
very
point I want to bring up once you're done with your thing. Actually, that's a really good thing to talk about.
right. So, for example, in something like Guilty Gear Strive, you have Potemkin was the Garuda Impact, right? It's plus on block. You don't need to press 50 buttons. You basically only need Garuda Impact. So making like a more complex block string that ends into Garuda Impact may actually make the Garuda Impact a lot weaker. It's kind of hard to like exactly explain what I mean. But I will need to contextualize this with Soku because it's something that I've learned in Soku, where if you have a button of or an attack more specifically, which function is to extend your pressure, right? That one move will at the point open up a path, right? You do a plus attack. That plus attack will usually lead you into more pressure or a frame drop. There's like nothing else. Like you are either doing a big pressure ender that like checks the opponent in some ways, or you take the respect and push even more pressure, which functionally just leads to more 50-50s, pretty much. But the thing is, a lot of people don't really understand this aspect and they just kind of press a bunch of buttons and then eventually they do the 50-50 situation, if even. Because a lot of people tend to just kind of do attacks and hope the opponent just kind of explode by mistake. They don't really guide the opponent to those mistakes. They just kind of do a 1, 2, 3, and they hope that in the middle of those attacks, the opponent just kind of trips. I've seen this in like many other fighting games, not just Isoten Circle. It's just very common in Isoten Circle, but I've seen this in other fighting games too.
Yeah, it's a universal thing.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me jumping into what I was going to
No, no,
talk
no, it's
about.
fine.
So this was very funny enough. I this is something I do in Melty Blood when I'm playing current code of when I'm running a block string with my character Half Moon Ryugi. I am running a specific set of options to keep myself at a mid range, so at any moment I can cancel into that character's pretty wide set of response tools. Especially given how reverse beat exists within Melty Blood, you can like, okay, I 2B to start from like a mid range, and then I can 2C to get in on someone, 5B to check them at the mid range, and then, okay, what's going on? Do I want to like reset with a 5A rebeat and then maybe restart my pressure because my opponent's respecting me a lot? Do I want to 5C to try to check them, maybe jumping or get them kind of in that awkward standing state? Do I want to go into a special to try to check them for a reset? Do I want to do Rekka to force some kind of like high-low check on my second hit or something? It's all about having that tree that you always mention, the tree of options, not closing the door, not stopping yourself from being able to do things, but making sure that everything kind of fits into this the junction, as you were trying to tell me way long ago when we were
Mm.
initially talking about that when you were teaching me about options selecting in Soku. So I wanna pull Soku up here just as a example. I want to show off just how I do stuff with race
Um,
in here because this is usually like a pretty clean
if
thing
we
to do, I
allow
would say.
me,
Yeah, what's up?
so this is the thing I was like talking about the way pressure is presented because you got open circle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like I think what's important is that this can happen in all fighting games. The button that does plus frames doesn't have to be executed from a very specific button. In Circle, it's very common to use a command normal. Command normal in this case are like 6A or 3A, which are like less open to options buttons, meaning that you have like less options allowed to you by using those buttons. Basically, you are more restricted. What is actually really good in Circle is to do the pressure extender button from like jabs, which are way harder to read, basically. So the example I will make in something like Guilty Gear is like doing as Potemkin, for example, as I mentioned before, is rather than doing like Garuda Impact from, I don't know, 2S or close S, which is pretty good to be honest. You could do it from jabs if you're like trying to get it like if you're trying to be quirky, like trying to be harder to read, because jabs, there's like an entire explanation on this, but like basically, jabs have like less block stun, so like it's harder to read the opponent. Like they try to read your animation cancels, basically, right? It's harder to react to everything going on because jabs have like less block stun, less hit stun. They're faster. They don't look like anything, right? It's more anonymous. It's less. I'm sure you understand what I'm trying to say. Like when you do a block string, so to speak, you make your sequences more constructed, but also more readable, more recognizable, easier to understand, right?
Usually. It's the
It's
weird
a
part. It's the weird part because in one you say that's like, oh, you want to make it readable. Some people point, but doesn't that make you predictable? Well, no,
it's a
not.
mixed bag. You want both. That's the problem. It depends.
This gets into the idea of like how in offense having good intent in offense means you're generally creating frame traps in situations where your opponent is going to make decisions. And this is
Yeah.
where I'm gonna put the game on screen so I can show what I mean here about this the comedy of decision making in strings. So I'm gonna put up the training dummy here. I'm gonna run the opponent to the corner here. I'm gonna make sure they're set to blocking. All block. Okay, so having intent in block strings is very, very easy if you are aware of how the game is constructed. So I'm going to run through an example of a block string that I do when I am playing this game. I will have the opponent in the corner, sitting at mid-range. I will do far 5A, 5B, IA, J2A. That is a really simple, safe sequence that is doing a couple checks in a row. We are doing, hey, mid-range far 5A as a basic engager. This is your simple button. From this, rather than going straight into, say, far 5A, 3A, 5B, I am remaining relatively open in my options, since if my opponent is going to start dashing at me when I do the far 5A, for example, let's set the bot to after block, forward dash, I do... Sorry. Interesting. I've now caught them for trying to dash when they're trying to read the 5B. We've created a situation where, with delays having intent in that structure, I can adjust and change what I'm doing to react to my opponent, having intent. We take the opponent off block here. Let's say our opponent is overblocking. Well, we can now change our string. So 5B, my 236B, which is my very funny plus frame reset option with lots of chip damage on the character, start into the situation. Something that is, I am going to my opponent and saying, hey, you should be engaging with what's happening here. Because 236B has a pretty notable gap. So if I have after block here, I don't think that's going to work there.
Yeah, it's like 5C. It's not tight, so you can actually mash, jump, dash, etc.
Yeah, so let's have jump up here, right? So that's a jump punish on this one.
Yeah, it is tight enough to be honest, but not tight enough to be.
Yeah,
it's
I mean, we can also do the whole like have the opponent like border escape upwards, right? So, they're out. That's a thing for playing with that engagement. If my opponent is doing that, then alright, cool. That's part of the defense game. That's still creating a situation where I'm going, hey, I want you to like border escape, and then I can like jump back J8A to try to catch them trying to fly over. There is an intent with the block string construction. I'm not simply running up to someone going like, I'm just gonna like slam all of my A buttons on top of you. People will do a lot of things. They'll always go 1, 2, 3, as Genki would say. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Far 5A, command normal, B, C, special. People will do that often. And that is not really building something with intent. You are simply going through the motions. That is a core problem when it comes to having intent. There is no... Simply doing something for the sake of it because it exists is not intent. We often criticize a lot of beginner players for wasted movement. A lot of people will always feel like they need to jump cancel every projectile option they use in this game. Why? They never really have an answer. It's like, well, I want to move. It's like, okay, but why are you moving? Why are you doing the thing? What is the purpose behind your decision? Some people tend to get very confused when I play, where I simply don't cancel oftentimes. Or if I cancel, it's like a neutral jump doing nothing. Or the classic, I simply walk forwards without really overcommitting to an option. Why is that? Because there's no point in committing to something when there's no requirement to it. There is intent in that decision. I don't need to make that commitment because there is no requirement. I'm not in the situation where it matters. A lot of people will simply make the decision because it's there, because it exists. Taking a decision is empowering. But making a decision like that is not always the correct decision. As confusing as it sounds to say it out loud, making a decision, taking an option is not always the best thing, because if you do not make that decision with full intent, you are simply doing something for the sake of it. It is an empty action.
I tend to use, like, at least in circle, a sort of like scale of commitment. So like doing a projectile and not canceling is like, depending on the situation, a 0.5 commitment, or like actually a 1 point commitment. And neutral jumping is like 0.5. It makes sense in circle because those actions don't like lead you to exploding most of the time. That's why I use a scale of commitment. The longer you go, the less, like, the more you're committing, right? That's the idea. A neutral jump out of nowhere is often extremely safe in circle, and it still leaves you so open to doing so many things. So that's why I say 0.5. While a projectile tends to be like an entire point, but you have still like a ground cancel, another projectile, a skill, even a specker in some cases, right? So it goes to what like you talk about, and what you mentioned before, the keep your doors open, basically leave
Yeah.
yourself open with
Th-
possibilities.
this one is really funny because I always have the same joke descriptor for the whole concept of leaving doors open. This is a discussion of its own. So, this is especially notable with older fighting games where some moves
Mm.
simply exist in a weird state that you can't
They sure
decipher.
do. They
Let's
sure do.
talk about Super Turbo for a second.
Oh
This
god,
is this is this is this is a funny one. So,
you could still strike, to be honest, but
I
yeah.
mean, sure, yeah, Third Strike too, but like the specific example I love
Mm.
using is a Super Turbo one.
Mm.
You all know Boxer, right? Uh, you know the whole joke that Boxer gets no reward over off his overhead? Because it sucks, right? It's just a shitty overhead punch that he can't combo into and doesn't really get any reward out of. You know what that's really good for though? It's really good for closing out rounds. When your opponent is like one tap away, you can force them to have to think about that, to put that on their mental stack. That is not closing a door. During like the main portion of a round, yeah, maybe like you don't want to use it too much as like maybe like a little funny reaction check, or like punching someone overhead for like a little bit of damage, be like, "Hey, are you awake? Are you paying attention?" But when you're at the end of a round, suddenly that really fast air quote no reward overhead that does a little bit of damage can win you a round basically for free because your opponent isn't considering it. I don't have it downloaded right now, but there's a very particular little joke comic that I would share very often in the past that was this, where it's a guy going, "Oh, boxer gets no reward off his overhead, so I don't need to think about it." And the next panel is him losing to boxer overhead because this player closed the door thinking, "Oh, I don't have to worry about that," where the opponent is actually actively thinking about it and using it as an option, going, "Hey, I can win a round off this overhead." Never discredit options that you have in your kit. It's a very important part of this whole thing. You need to make sure that you are considering the wide whole berth of your options. Yeah, some things suck. Cherno 2A
Mhm.
sucks. That button is ass.
Violent.
It might be the violence button. It might
Violence.
be it might be the fastest normal in the game, but it has no range. Thing
Yeah.
is, if your opponent's directly on top of you because they're not aware, suddenly Cherno 2A is really powerful. If your opponent is like not timing their meaties very well and they're just standing on top of you on your wake up, you can just like wake up to 2A and you can suddenly ruin someone's day for free.
For no damage, but still, yeah.
Well, yeah. The thing is, like, the mash is there to be disruptive and annoying and to
Yes.
force a scramble. Like, you can just, like,
Yeah.
2A someone and then just go back to blocking. You can watch someone mind break in real time. Like, it's a real
On
thing in fighting games. Like, in Melty Blood, uh, sometimes you just mash 2A to be disruptive. Like, Sure, Melty Blood's a game where you get full combos off of 2As, but okay, whatever. What's another example? Strive. Sometimes you 5P someone because they're leaving a big enough gap. It's not because you're gonna full convert into every situation off of it. It's because you're trying to be disruptive. You have intent with your game plan there. You're trying to
Yeah,
annoy someone. You're like, hey, that gap's a little too big. Punch them and then just go back to being to blocking. Watch someone like freak out because like, oh shit, they mashed me. What do I do?
there is on the on this line of thinking, the idea of like knowing how all your tools are supposed to be utilized, right? Because it's easy to look at like at whatever button you have that recently the entire Evo Hugo does awful like the heavy kick that does nothing, right, and goes over Ken doing a super
Yeah,
whatnot.
the Hayato
Moment,
matches.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is a real. If anyone wants to study something for what someone with intent looks like, go watch that shit. That that move going over the Ken super, something people consider fucking bad, being a direct hard counter to that specific situation is what knowledge and studying and having intent behind your actions look like. It's so fucking cool.
It was the Yato versus. It was the Evo Japan, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. If I remember correctly, it was Evo. It was
No,
the
it was
Evo. It was when they brought Third Strike back.
yeah.
It
It was this
was
year, pretty
yeah this
sure.
year. It was so fucking cool. That was awesome.
Um, on that regard though, like I was teaching someone the other day, and I mentioned something that also came to mind for myself, and it is the idea of understanding why something works how it works or why it works like that, like in general, just understanding why a certain thing is good, because often you have people playing a character, it's like, oh, this attack, this sequence, this whatever is supposed to be good, so I'm gonna do the good thing, right? And the example I used, because again it came to my mind myself, is like, why is 2 plus 2 equal 4, right? Why is that? That 2 plus 2 is equal
This is
4,
this is
right?
one of my favorite tangents when talking about this kind of shit. The 2 plus 2 is 4. Okay, but why?
Yeah, exactly. It's the easy answer is like on a superficial level is that it just because 2 plus 2 is just 4. Like people know that because it's just how math is. That's how mathematically it works. It just 2 and 2 do a 4. But the more annoying answer that does actually like help you expand your brain is that the math is a system invented by human beings to count things, basically. Every extension of the system, like multiplication, division, even equations, right? They are just an extension of the baseline of, if I count multiple things, they add up to a series of numbers, which is like um, a terminology I invented to keep counts of things. I have a one, I have zero things, I have one thing, I have two things, I have three things, right? And that keeps going up. Math is just counting a thing many times, right? So 2 plus 2 is equal 4 when it comes to math is specifically that you have two things and then two other things, which when put together like that are four things. But realistically, you just have four things that you divide into two groups of two, right? It's a dumb example in a sense, but actually really important because again, that's why 2 plus 2 is equal 4. It's because you have four items divided in a groups of two, or two items and two other items or two things that when put together, they reach a count of 4. That's why 2 plus 2 is equal 4. It's not because of like some bizarre, nonsensical like math logic. It's just you have four things divided into groups of two,
You sound
of
like
two
Daigo
things and
making
then
one of
two.
his whack fucking profound statements. It's so cool, dude.
It's a dumb thing, but like the reason I am saying this is because I for years I never like, to me math was like really confusing. It still is confusing to a certain thing. I could never like learn it fully because it's explained to you in school, as just a matter of fact. 2 plus 2 is equal 4 because 2 plus 2 is equal 4. But no, there is like a worldly utility to it, obviously, as you definitely know. When you become an adult, it's like, oh yeah, I be what the fuck. But just even outside of the normal everyday scope, just it's the concept. There is a logic to it. There's a system. Math is built upon a system, and a very worldly one. You are supposed to use it to count things. It's not random. It's not just because yes. There's a logic imbued into it. That's how it works. And similarly, when it comes to fighting games, people are like, well, the move is good because it's good, or I need to do this because I need to do this, or I'm doing this because it works sometimes. But the problem with like the trenchcoat intent logic is it goes back into this. Everything you're doing is supposed to exist within a system, within a set of logic that if you don't truly understand, well, you're doing nothing. You're just doing random things. And it's a mess because this entire discussion also comes into play with the importance of understanding beating someone versus them losing to you, or the difference between learning and winning, right?
The
That kind of
classic.
situation. Yeah.
Genki, post the Sejam video.
This is always.
We have like 4 Sejam videos for these exact topics. It's so great.
It's always the same thing, and it's actually
Just
like,
because a decision worked doesn't mean it was the right one.
yeah, exactly. Like it's in like we take those and all that, but it's important to understand why that was a debatable discussion. The problem with like picking the good option is that you actually need to evaluate if doing is good because the opponent just can't deal with it. So that means they don't know something, which is can be bad in a certain way, or it worked because you used it correctly, or like mixed up your point, or whatever the hell. There's a difference. Like if you're fighting someone and they trip and die because you did like a thing and they don't know how to deal with it, that's sure you won, but realistically, it wasn't you beating them; it was them losing to you, which is different.
If someone
It's
trips and
very different.
dies over every single frame trap you present them every single time with no
Yeah.
variance, you're not beating someone, they're losing to you.
Yes. Now there is really like there's not a sort of like, oh, it's like you're stronger only when you beat someone, and if they lose to you, that's bad. It's more that to grow stronger, to grow better, you need to recognize which is which. Because when you go and like try to do better, you need to recognize if the opponent is dying to you, or well, you're beating them. Because you cannot, how do you fix otherwise like anything you're doing? You need to recognize if everything you're doing is actually good or bad, so to speak, or like inconsequential even. So many people like this circles back. People be doing shimmies or like full screen, like going back and forth, like at a range. Like, why are you shimmying? A ghost? My dead grandpa? It's not there. What are you doing? It's full screen. No one has range there. Why are you doing back and forth like
Yep.
it matters?
Yep, both players are max range, neither are a physical zoner. One player is like fidgeting back and forth, the other player is just holding 6.
Like none of this matters. Like options, intent, situation, like there is a context in which everything you're doing does make sense. The idea of intent is that like a certain range or a certain situations, you're able to utilize a certain function, a certain mechanic. You cannot press crouching middle kick into a Hadoken unless you are in the range to press crouching middle kick into Hadoken. So like,
Yep.
you're not.
If that medium kick does not get blocked, you can't go into Hadoken. You have to be in range for that. If you're doing that at
Yeah,
max range, you just skip the medium kick, you fire a Hadoken.
yeah, exactly. It's a simple. It's an extremely simple thing, but because what you were searching isn't like people get lost in. Oh, I need to do this specific blocks thing. Hadoken, like crouching MK into Hadoken.
That is an
But
interesting, yeah, because
you want a token.
I didn't talk about it a while ago, but that was definitely a discussion for Melty Blood that happened way back in the day when I was playing, where people treated block strings as a rigid option thing if you were playing every moon, rather than just a thing that only full moon does. And even then, full moon has variation on how you block string because you have to present frame traps at different situations. You have bricks in your block string that you use, things
Yes.
where you are using like, hey, this is my approach part of my string, this is my frame trap A, this is my frame trap B, this is my frame trap C, this is my safe ender, this is my reset ender, this is my whatever, I'm gonna do the fucking default dance ender to hopefully try to hit you and do something whack. You generally are constructing these from pieces with intent to create situations and design a minefield for your opponent to navigate, which is how it should
Mm.
be, as opposed to I have to do A, B, C in strict order, and my opponent
Yeah.
must explode between B and C, or else nothing happens.
Exactly.
And that gets into the mention of some players just lose to that stuff. As I said, sometimes you throw the exact same frame traps 70 times in a row, and the opponent will die 70 times. When I showed that example of racing where I did FAR 5A, 5B, IAJ2A, or FAR 5A, 236B, IAJ2A, I will loop that on someone for an entire game, and they will die every single time because they aren't following, they're not looking at what's happening on the screen. On the screen, what's happening is the FAR 5A is saying, hey, border escape, hey, forward dash. And the opponent, not understanding the intent, not understanding how to navigate the situation, thinks they have to mash it. That's that's the design philosophy behind constructing a block string, behind doing something. You are explicitly targeting something. You are solving a problem, creating a situation that the opponent has to navigate. That is the intent behind that. The very important critical bit of sauce that most people never really get to because they don't think about it in that context. They look at the screen, they go, hey, when I push this sequence of buttons, someone dies. Clearly that's good. Again, we get back. 2 plus 2 is 4. But why is 2
But
plus 2
why?
4? Insert the Vsauce music sting.
There is also the fact that like this specifically is about like how to construct pressure and the intent here is simply enough to set up a frame trap, right? More or less. But the extremely annoying thing is that in truth there is more to that. There's the entire discussion, at least when it comes to like, well, I was gonna say so, but now that's universal again, where a button that could be good for pressure doesn't necessarily mean that it's also good for like conversions, right?
Street Fighter 6 is a great example of that, actually.
Yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of people get lost in how Street Fighter 6 is a 6-button game. That's a lot of buttons you think you have to consider. The reality of it is you're only ever really considering 3 buttons at any given range.
yeah, pretty much. There is the there's the issue when like even in neutral you're pressing a button and it's like, okay, what does this button do? Because you have attacks that maybe are able to give you plus frames, so that's pretty good advantage. But then you hit the opponent with them, and they give you nothing. They are great for plus frames on block maybe, or even on hit, but they don't actually lead anywhere. They just give you advantage. So that's cool. But then you want damage, so you need to use another button. But that button, but the attack, might lead you to open yourself because it's riskier to use. And while it does give you a conversion if you hit the opponent, well, it doesn't do anything else. So it's worse for offense, as in pressure. Or maybe you press the button and it's only good in counter it, but basically nowhere else. That can happen. That's a thing, right?
BlazBlue is a good one for that.
Mm.
That's a game where
So,
you have a
mm,
lot of situations you have to react to specifically based on the situation. Some buttons are really good for like counter hit situations. Other buttons are just very good for, hey, I want to like do a poke in neutral to engage. Some are very good for just regular hits. I'm not good enough at Blaze Blue to really go into the full birth of that, but I know someone locally who talks a lot about that. He plays a lot of Jin, and that is a character where you are having to do like crouch confirms, standing confirms, a lot of very specific stuff
mm,
that is contextual based on what's happening on screen, and you have to understand what is used where and have the intent to make it function.
it's a really complicated discussion because like I see this like in Soku, the example I always use is Suwako, mostly because I've been playing the character, but also because like it's so common. People tend to do like one, two, three. They press one button, they immediately, without thinking anything, just cancel into the next two. When the single button alone, if used smartly, leads to better damage if used correctly. Like if you're paying attention, basically, you use the single button like JD, the big three Suwako has access to, is a great counter attack. But if you immediately cancel, then you often missed out on the opportunity to do bigger damage. But to get the bigger damage, you need to have the right super, the right spell card, right? So it requires you to have the right spell card, be in position, near corner mostly, and get the counter, which you have to react to. Like, you have plenty of time, but you have to like you have to not cancel immediately into the next move, and you have to react to the counter. That I will say is the most simple form of intent. You're pressing a bunch of buttons because you're in the right context, right situation, and you have a plan, right? You're trying to get a counter hit conversion. That is using an attack with intent, with meaning. You are planning to do a thing, and you
Suako
know the entire
players
ramification.
lined up on the shelf like Buzz Lightyear, going, "I will jump cancel 5B
6B, 6C.
in order to J8A someone. I am so good at this video game."
I will now cancel anything I've done in 6B, repeat for the entire game. So it's very complicated because like the as stated at the start, intent is so many things. It's a trench coat. It's a macrocosm of like ideas. Because fighting games are you're supposed to know what you're doing, and most people really don't. Like it's kind of it's not like even a hot take. The problem is that a lot of people will, which is there's nothing wrong with it. Like a lot of players will just pick up character, maybe see a video online about how to play the character, like what's the best combo or whatever, right? And they usually just throw the thing they want out. The example you always do, where you fight someone and they have the most absolutely garbage dumpster trash fire defense known to mankind, but then they hit you once, and because they are only thinking about one damn thing, which is doing the fucking combo, they hit you and they perfectly convert into the highest damaging combo they
Yeah,
know.
Ken players in Street Fighter 6
Heavy
cannot play
punch.
neutral, cannot play defense, but they get that one mid-screen hit and they're like doing the side swap yoinky splunky for 8,000 damage and you're left wondering what the fuck are you doing with your life, buddy?
On that note, there's also like an entire discussion which I don't exactly think is really intent related. That's like the entire concept of how was it? Oh shit, I got lost myself. Ah,
You can do it.
uh, no, I can't. It was the um, it's somewhat connected to internet, which is the idea of like understanding how the yeah, there we go, there you go. It's technically vaguely intent oriented, but it's the idea of like, if you don't engage or play a thing, right, and it's a scenario, a situation, you don't know about it, right? Intent can slightly be moved into that direction too, because it's about like planning how you play the game also, right? I've seen people actually, now you know what, it is connected. I've seen people just put coins into the machine. They play 50 games, 70 games. In 1 week, they have like ground out, grounded out,
Ground.
whatever. They ground out. Wow, that's awful. Like 200 games in a single week, which is a lot for Sudoku, mind you. The games like single rounds in Sudoku Go, they take a while.
I mean, it depends. Sometimes you
Mm,
can have like very quick traditional fighting game rounds where it's over in like maybe a minute or two. Sometimes you play with people who think that not engaging is peak, and you have like 5 to 10 minute rounds, and you just kind of wonder what you're
the
doing. But
average is like like 3 minutes top
yeah,
average
something in that
when it's
range. Yeah.
worse. But maybe people just grind out a lot of games, whatever, and that's kind of nothing because they're not really like paying attention to what's going on. They just play more and more and more. And while that is a good way to perfect your muscle memory, you really gotta pay attention to what's going on. You need to like actually know what's going on. And a lot of people don't really engage a lot of things. There are sections to a fighting game. Okay, what do I mean by that? So, my favorite example of this is the player that in any fighting game, mostly 2D, will see the character that stretches their limbs. So, Dalsim like, let's say.
Yeah,
And they pick,
the normal zoner. They have the big long
yeah,
physical
yeah, yeah.
bones.
They pick that guy, they go online, and all they do is press the funny long button. They don't really have like much else going on for them. And they just do that. And they win because they kind of just they seek the dopamine for maybe they enjoy like zoning people out. The problem is because there is basically a refusal to engage with the game beyond the single interaction, the moment you get your hands on them, they basically dematerialize. They be gone. They
Rendered
poof.
unto atoms.
Yeah, because they have zero defense. But why that is? Are they just bad? Not necessarily. The problem is that if you play a character which entire game plan basically just hinges upon the idea of never letting the opponent get in, how do you think you can train your defense when you never get to train your defense? Defense is a bunch of situations, either character specific or just generally blocking someone. If you are never forced, at least generally, into that situation, how do you think you can practice that situation? There is the comrade post the sage. What's the sage?
Oh hell yeah, let's
Playing
go.
different characters of different levels.
Teach you different skills. Yeah. One
Um,
learning a character will not teach you every skill in the game. You should absolutely branch out, learn multiple
mhm.
characters, and try to figure out how the systems work from different angles. You should. I always say you should pick a low tier, a mid tier, and a top tier and play them
Mhm.
to see how they engage with the game differently. You will learn a
Yeah,
lot from those three characters and how they interact with the systems. Because, as always, low tiers generally have some kind of systematic problem that prevents them from engaging with the system mechanics. Mid
yeah.
tiers simply engage with the mechanics as is, no additional fluff. And top tiers largely get to ignore and bypass those mechanics because something in their kit makes them really powerful.
Or they play in the system really well.
I Melty Blood is a fun example for that current code there. Crescent Moon Arc is what you could consider Apex Melty Blood. She is playing the system mechanics perfectly. She doesn't get to do anything that's notably air quote fucky or stupid. She just gets to play everything in the system unbelievably well. Versus Honest Mid's Michael C. Roa, just has the big, funny, air unblockable projectile lightning orb that just plays the whole game for you. It does your taxes. It cooks you a nice 3-course meal. You don't have to care. Fhime, you have frame 1 air pillar. You do TK pillar and you watch someone fucking explode because they whiffed a button and died, or you just decided to neutral like, I don't feel like playing the game, and you hit someone in startup because that's just what pillar gets to do. Versus a character like the Nekos in that same game where the characters by design are intentionally dysfunctional and don't actually get to do anything because they're joke characters and intentionally designed poorly. Or you can point at the entirety of the Half Moon mechanic, where you don't get access to a core fundamental mechanic of EX guarding. You can't instant block. Suddenly, a whole bunch of characters who have sort of difficult interactive offense where the defender has to actually engage with EX block and the attacker has to mess with their strings to try and throw off the timing, don't have to care anymore. They just throw the fucked up funny thing on you, and it's up to you to have to use shield bunker, hard callouts with shields or mashes to try to deal with that stuff. Video games.
It truly is video games, and it truly goes back to the interactions. You have to be aware of how everything actually works. You will find yourself like picking a character, and that character will either ignore or get advantages, or no need to play certain aspects of the game. But you gotta understand why. Why is that like that? the the intent thing is just understanding the system you reside with. It's a very complicated discussion because it's so many things require intent. You can kind of bend the discussions in every single way, right?
Yeah. I mean, look at all the
It's
tangents we've gone on so far in this, like, 50 minutes we've been talking here.
I will disagree on being tangents because like the problem with like the discussion is that it is just tangents because
Yeah.
the intent concept, the idea of having meaning in your actions is just everything.
It's a discussion in a trench coat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like
exactly.
three topics in a trench coat is the point of intent. It's a very encompassing. There are so many things connected to the idea of intent that if we tried to isolate and discuss one as is, the whole discussion would fall apart because it doesn't work like that.
Pretty much. The funniest thing I think that like the top of the discussion is that at the end of the day, the intent, the meaning, it falls back to the player, right? But exactly as I said before, hey, you're playing a zone that doesn't have technically to play defense, or will have a hard time getting into the situation unless you purposely fail at neutral, in a sense. That's also intent, right? You put weights on yourself because you need to approach a certain aspect of the game that either your character doesn't need to or you don't have to because you could just skip it, right? This goes into the playing like lower skill players or someone that is like weaker than you because like they don't know as much as you, right? So you put your weights on and you let your opponent play more, right? That is
So
also in
I
to a
did
degree.
this. I did this the other night, playing Zard with someone locally, where
Mm.
I because I play Saul Bad Guy in Zard, and my general playstyle is to sit at mid range and let my opponent hang themselves. I like to let them make decisions and make mistakes. And generally, when I play our newer players, I'm not playing how I usually would, where I'm like, I'm gonna just be overwhelming offense, try and get in your face. I will sit mid range. I will like far slash two slash to just check you and kind of just generally wait to see what your reactions are. And when you whiff the big funny button, I will kill you and put you in the corner and run the offense and do a similar thing where rather than trying to set myself up for like the close slash 6p frame trap stuff that generally you want to be doing with Saul, I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to far slash 2 slash 5h. And I'm going to like sit at that annoying spacing and not really overcommit to doing offense. I'm going to just poke you. I'm going to just be annoying. I'm going to let you make decisions. And every single time I do this with a new player, the same thing happens every time. They always try to aggressively poke out and always whiff their options that let me punish them severely for it. I don't have to extend myself. I don't have to really do anything. I put the weight on and go, I'm not going to initiate. I'm going to let you initiate. And then I'm going to punish you for initiating without really much of an intent or a reason.
And that forces you to have better like neutral because now you're not forcing the game to just be like overwhelming offense, right? Like you're letting the opponent play, and that forces you to know how to counter them, right?
Yep.
Simple enough.
Yep. I have to look at their game plan and understand what their objective is and try to decipher and counteract it. Rather than playing a game of I just want to skip neutral all the time, I'm going, all right, I'm going to stop your neutral. Because if I wanted to, yeah, I could just like IADJH constantly at somebody as Saul, and that largely just shuts down most offense in that game because Saul JH is fucking stupid. I don't though. Because again, it's sometimes better to just let the opponent play. Put the weights on, let the opponent play, learn how to deal with someone rather than trying to be the problem.
Hmm. There is there's something funny about this entire discussion. There is it really depends on why you go to the gym, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I
Like,
know the analogy you're about to make. Go for it.
yeah. I mean, it's there is you could see gym, you could see anything. You can use any analogy, but like not everyone is playing like fighting games to self-awarely become a better self, right? You want to press the funny buttons and do your own thing, right? You go to the gym, you may want to like just be more healthy or be more muscular, be stronger, different interests. So you obviously play and train for those things. Intent is basically that. The intention, you decide which intention you are interested in. Some people are not there to grow. They're just there to do, right? It's it's like there's layer zero of this discussion, and then there's the secret layer -1. Are you even interested in engaging with the premise in the first place? Like that's is the secret very first step, which is
Oh
are
man,
we even
that's good.
engaging with the premise? Which is fine. You don't have
Yeah,
to. You
yeah,
don't, you don't have to.
yeah.
But I've seen people be like, "Oh, I'm totally, just playing casually, just doing my thing," and then you punch them, and they go like, "What the fuck?" It's like you're playing casually. You need to like keep your expectations, a bit more on the low, because to be better, to grow stronger, you can play more. That will work eventually, though that seems kind of painful. Or you can sit down and understand why you're doing anything at all. Understand the system, understand the mechanic, understand what your options actually mean in the context. But you gotta accept the premise. You gotta be there for it.
Yeah, that's a difficult, like, further tangent discussion because that's like a person to person thing. Not every
Yes.
like some people play casually and then evolve into taking things more seriously. Some people start serious and then go more casual. Some people simply stay casual. Some people have toxic casual mindsets.
Mm.
It's kind of not really super relevant to the discussion here, but also kind of is, but not. I don't really want to get into it. I don't really think this discussion is going to be helpful for this particular talk, but
It's busy. Like reality is that everyone does what right. You cannot force them.
yeah,
But
yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
I think it's important to mention because it is part of like the intent, I don't know, like concept. Because if you don't accept the premise of like the system you reside within and how the game works, right? There is that entire giant, like there's this entire giant, right, looming in the distance. You need to accept the premise. You need to leave the door open, because if you close it out and you don't accept the premise, then even the smallest thing, like understanding why pressing crouch MK a mid range is good at all, or why you shouldn't be shimming at full screen, they sort of get lost in translation. Basically, they get lost in the sands of time. You know, it's
Yeah,
a small thing, and it is not an exactly fun discussion, but it is part of it.
I mean,
It all
or the
starts
classic, like you're
from
not playing Street Fighter to play Guilty Gear.
yeah.
That's another like whole can of worms in itself. My favorite one being you're not playing Soku to play Melty Blood. Stop mashing 2A.
Absolutely. Unless you have the right type of character, unless you're right the right type of character, you're not win anything. Unless like you're actually planning to stop the point from like attacking you, you're trying to take a turn, and even then, you gotta plan out for it. So it's a very it can go anywhere because like it gets pretty it gets pretty like lower level, kernel level of the machine. Because the basic premise is lost to you if you're not like just accepting like everything else that comes within. Like intent has to start way before you open the game. Basically, it's surprisingly complicated topic.
Yeah.
I didn't, I wasn't even thinking like going there, but I guess like in a sense, there's like a lot of psychological elements to it in a very bizarre way,
I
like
mean, as
many
we
things, I
usually tend to
suppose.
say, like a big part of fighting games is the psychology. You have to be able to
Yeah.
grapple with yourself. Like one
Mm.
very fun, difficult thing when it comes to fighting games is you have to be able to look inwards whenever you're like losing or failing. This is not a matter of like the game is not at fault when you lose. You are at fault for losing, and that's something that a lot of people do grapple with, and a lot of people don't have that self ability to look inwards and just you see a lot of people like blame the other player or go for Johns whenever like, oh, I lost the game. What happened? Sun was in my eye. Dog ate my network cable. It's like, no, you just probably just made some bad decisions, and like with some practice and knowledge, you'll learn from it. But the disconnect of like, oh, I lost, therefore, I am bad. It's like, unfortunately, the primal human brain that gets very upset when you lose because failure equates death to our caveman mind is like kind of it's kind of fucked up. It's kind of fucked up,
It
honestly.
it
There are
really is.
there are some people I've interacted with who just they cannot fathom when they lose, and you watch them fucking detonate in real time when you talk to them. Whereas like I don't know, man, like you lose the video game because you made bad decisions or whatever. Shoulder shrug, try again another time or some shit.
Yeah, and that obviously leads to like more problems because I've seen people play the game in a way like you need to play like you want to learn. If you play with the meaning of trying to lose, that is going to obviously paint the entire picture in a very different way, right? Because I've seen like when people play not to lose, they tend to never expand their options into newer things or understand why something is good or bad. They're just trying not to lose,
Yeah, it's
which
actually
is
a
also
very
different from trying to win.
yeah.
Also,
I was gonna say that's a very different way to describe it because like there's a really funny way to word it where it's like some people play to learn, some people play to win, and some people play to not lose.
to not lose.
And it's very weird like trying
Mhm.
to describe those because playing to learn is very straightforward. Someone's just playing the game because they want to learn stuff in it. They want to improve as a player. That's pretty normal. Playing to win is also very normal. You're taking optimal decisions and you're playing because you want to win. You want to see the win screen. Cool. Playing not to lose, though, is really weird, you know?
It is. It really is. It's a completely different state of mind. Like it's very close resembling the wanting to win because you're trying to like your main objective is to well reach victory, right? But specifically not to lose tends to be more of a you're kind of lost into the game. You're not really thinking too straight. You're just kind of doing the winning tactics, but you're not really even considering how good or bad they are in given a context. Basically, you're just doing. You know that this is supposed to be good, and then you do it, or you know you have a tool to not interact or engage with a certain element of the game, so you don't. I feel like playing to win, to a degree, is supposed to be more of a I know what I'm doing.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
planning ahead,
If you're
basically.
playing in bracket, you're playing to win.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically, yeah.
if you're in bracket, you're playing to win, and that's like there is absolutely zero wrong with that. Your intent at that point is because you want to win, you want to succeed. That's fine. Playing when you're playing casually, playing to learn is where your mind should be. You should just be slamming games because you want to like figure stuff out. You want to learn things. Play The playing not to lose is that very weird toxic mindset for casual games where you will watch people just turn into gremlins because they got beat or something. It's strange.
You
You
will
see it
also
a
like
lot
lo-
everywhere in every community and not even in fighting games, but in like League of Legends is such a
mm.
great example of like playing not to lose. That game has a very cooked community. If you've been on the internet for long enough, that place is rancid. But we're
I
starting to get too far off the tangent. This is still like technically the funny layer negative one of playing, having the right intent when playing. Again, playing to learn, playing to win, playing not to lose is intent for playing before you actually get to the point of having intent when you are actively playing the game, which is, character specific or system specific goals. It's a long, messy, big discussion that hopefully we've mostly tried to make sense through this our very typical schizophrenic tangent conversation.
if there's one thing I would like to say about this, like you gotta remember, it is part of the internet. It is a part of like, but like loss and defeat isn't death. There's always tomorrow.
Yep. You
Is it?
ultimately, this is a safe space for failure because video games are not real life. If you lose in the video game, you're not going to instantly die. That one movie is not in fact real. You die in the game, you do not die in real life. You just have to go learn stuff and improve as a person.
As I like to say, there is always tomorrow, and if it's not tomorrow, it's the day after.
The rock will keep spinning.
The rock will, yeah. The earth will keep spinning with or without you. It's fine. Just do your do your thing.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
It has been an interesting discussion.
yeah, I think we've mostly run the
Today.
course here.
Yeah. Yes. Hopefully, if you're listening to this, hopefully it was interesting. We definitely went kind of schizo posting a bit, but like
It's us, of course. We
it's
could
a
schizo posting.
yeah, it is a complicated discussion. To be fair, I feel like
Yeah,
it's very normal to.
especially on like an unscripted, like we're just kind of letting the conversation flow. Like this is, if I actually wanted to do some kind of like serious major breakdown of what intent means, it would probably require like a full video essay thing on the level of like a Core A video, and I don't have that dog or the time in me for it.
It is a busy discussion. It's such a busy discussion.
Yeah, man.
It's too encompassing. Too many things that you will need to like point out because intent is everything. It's the very concept of what like why are you even doing this in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right, I think we have managed to say all to a degree.
Yeah, as usual, our once a month meetup to nod a podcast at each other because it's fun. Alrighty, well, with that, appreciate anyone still listening on YouTube. Hope everybody listening has a fantastic day and a very merry holiday. It is that time of
It is
year.
a
Instantly dating this. Holy fuck. Yeah. Any parting words, Genki, before I hit the stop button?
Let me think. Well, this Christmas I gave you my heart.
Shut up, bitch. I'm gonna fucking kill you. It's on site, bitch. I am going to end you. I will destroy every.
Classic.
Classic.
Classic. Well, yeah, no. Well, thank you for listening, and always remember, don't be too harsh on yourself. Learning is just failing, and learning is part of the process. You don't need to be too harsh. Like failure is not death, right?
Also, don't be afraid to ask for help. You are not a burden.
That too, yeah.
Asking
The
for
right
help is okay. People will help you, and if someone is a dickhead about it, you should punch them in the face.
Yeah, pretty much. Like it's especially with fighting games, it's all about because there is no time for discussion, but maybe it should have been inserted somewhere. But everyone to grow needs someone else. It's you bounce between each other, right? Someone needs someone else to grow. growing alone is really, really hard. And I say this as someone who had to do that. So
Yeah, same.
Yeah. That said, yeah, it's almost Christmas. So
Christmas.
enjoy your
Just a week
holidays.
away. I am
Just week
so excited
away.
by this information.
But mind you, almost Christmas does not mean it is Christmas. Watch out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, enjoy your holidays, and I guess we'll see you either probably next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time,
Yeah.
Genki. Appreciate the talk as always.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Have a good one,
Thank
you
you
too.
for your time.